Hi folks, Slick Slices here. Now this is a tag knife saying what are your most used knives? And had I done this any other time, any other year, we would have had a certain group of knives, of which these are representative, and would, if we probably went back to 2019, these probably would have been three of my most used knives of 2019, simply because they are all slip joints. The Kaiser Zip Slip, the Enzo PK70, which is I even to this day actually my going out bag, my day bag as it were, has an Enzo PK70, the one with the same G10 handles but with a titanium bolster, or the Otter. Oh, getting better at this, but I'm still not great at it. The Otter Anchor Messer, which is a Solingen made knife. This one's made in Taichung factory in Taiwan. Probably the best fit and finish of any machine-made knives you can buy now or ever. Although actually you can't buy these anymore because they're all sold out, which I have something to do with, but there we are. The Kaiser Zip Slip, again, a well-made knife, but not in the same league really. Vagnino design. This is available in G10 version from Kaiser, which is a bit cheaper than this one. This is the S35 and titanium version, which I think mixes a good steel. I mean, S35, S30V, these are good steels to make a knife out of. They do last well as an everyday carry knife. They need almost no sharpening and occasional stropping. And this one I have sharpened, hence the kind of shiny edge, but only that shows it's a measure of how much this one has actually been used. However, these are not my most carried knives at the moment, because we have been in lockdown to one degree or another for most of the last 18 months or so, perhaps a little bit longer than that even. And so I am rarely going out of the house much. I have a number of meetings every week, but they're almost exclusively done on Teams or Zoom. So I originally took the opportunity to start carrying knives that I wouldn't otherwise carry, and some of them are in front of me and others are not. I've been carrying my Benchmade 940 an awful lot throughout that period. This has arrived in that period, so it hasn't perhaps been carried as much, but of late it's been carried quite a lot. This is the Benchmade Bailout, which is, I suppose, a sort of development of the bug out. The bug out is now available with aluminium scales, but it was always just ivory, and then it was carbon fibre. You could get aftermarket scales that were in various other materials, but the Bailout originally came with G10 scales, which was a step up from the bug out, and now comes with aluminium scales, which makes it similar to my 940, which, as I say, has been an ever-present user. It doesn't happen to be on my desk here because it's actually the place in the house where I normally sit. I have a little caddy with various bits in it, and my 940 is in that. This one is CPM M4 steel, which in some ways puts them all in the shade, and it's also, sometimes I can actually flick it, but I can certainly roll it open easily, which makes it a very useful carrying knife. It's a very thin, slicey blade, which I say in some ways owes its heritage to the bug out, because the bug out, as well as being super light, which is, in itself that's something, but it's what I think is perhaps its more important gift to the world is the fact that it comes with a really super thin, slicey blade, and this takes its heritage from that. It's a Tanto. Well, American Tanto, nothing to do with Tantos. It's, yeah, well, forget that. But it's didn't come terribly sharp. I sharpened it, but I haven't done a particularly good job on it. it's not too difficult to sharpen as one might expect of M4. It's actually it is one of the things that I noticed in my knife acquisitions of late is that it is I'm going for harder steels. This one is 62 Rockwell. We're going to come on to a couple of others in a minute which are as hard or harder, but so that's one of my most used at the moment. Now I've carried this quite a bit. I don't know if it quite falls into the most used category, but it was just a thing that I could carry. I don't know if I had free choice in my knife carrying life, you know, we didn't have silly laws, whether this would absolutely fall into the category of a must-have, but it is good. It's ram's horn in the covers, and I like ram's horn, although I don't like ram's horn done like this. I prefer it done with the bark removed and to show the luminescence inside it. But it makes a really good fruit knife, as does the bailout actually, but it's very thin and slicey, but it's also quite long, which is good if you're cutting up apples. It's you know, it's a full 4-inch blade. So that one's been carried and used quite a bit. I have 3 different large toothpicks, so it's always been a little bit dicey as to which has been the most used, as it were. But it's been quite a commonly used one. Now I'm stuck with 5, and I'm really stuck now because I have actually 6 more knives to show you, and I haven't carried statistics, so I haven't run statistics, so I don't know actually which is actually the most carried of the next ones I show you. But I think next one I show you is one that I'm going to rule out because, given that it's one of a pair, I know that I carry the other one more than I carry this one. Now this is one, if I was going out and if I was being brave and going to carry a lock knife that I was prepared to justify, I think I would be happier trying to justify a knife with a sub 3-inch blade than I would be trying to justify a larger one, because I could argue to a policeman that I'm allowed to carry a sub 3-inch folding knife and this is a sub 3-inch folding knife, and see how far I would get with the question of whether a locking knife is a folding knife or not. I'd certainly rather be arguing that than I would like to be arguing for an obviously greater than 3-inch knife. So this isn't going to fall into my most used knives, although it has been used quite a lot. While I've been at home and I don't have to consider that question of arguing the point with a policeman, I've generally just gone straight for the full large Sebenza. And I like this one for a number of reasons. One, it's bigger, it fits my hand better, but also it's got this these micarta inlays, and the micarta inlays make it just that little bit fuller in the hand, so it's actually a more comfortable knife to use, and it is a really good working knife. My only perhaps criticism of these knives was that neither of them arrived particularly sharp, but where I do like them, and this is a real big thing for me, they are left-handed, and therefore I can get the full liner lock experience, which I can't get with any other knife, no matter what they cost, because you can't do that. It's a right-handed liner lock is just that much harder to work. So that's certainly been one of my most carried. I think we are going to end up with 6 here, but there we are. Equally, I have another pairing, and this pair, oh yeah, these are right up in my most, absolutely in my most carried knives, because they're just fantastic knives. Now, a lot of people will tell you that these are far too expensive to carry, and I kind of take the opposite view. I kind of think if a knife's expensive, then you've a duty to carry it, What's the point of having an expensive knife and leaving it sitting in a drawer? These are not just expensive because they're beautiful, and they are beautiful. The polish on them is just unbelievable. I don't know how well it comes over in the in a video, but these are mirror polished to an extent that, you know, people talk about mirror polishing knives, but there's always a bit of a wave or a ripple in there somewhere. These are absolutely flat, shiny, polished surfaces. They also have a zero grind, which I rather like, and a convex one at that, which makes them just a bit tougher, which is important because, as I was saying earlier, I'm going for harder steels, and this one here is 67 Rockwell, so it's pretty blooming hard. This is the Rockstead Heathen, by the way. But it's not going to go in my top 5 only because of the 2 Rocksteads that I have, it's carried less. Now they may be carried as they're both, you know, might have ruled out the Sebenza possibly and the Bailout possibly, but this is the one that I actually carry and use far more over the last year of the 2, because, you know, you're going to be hung for it anyway. You might as well be hung for the bigger one. Now this one is obviously it's a DLC coated blade, a black blade. The mirror polish is just as good. The zero grind is perhaps, I would say, even better, but this one is a mere 65 Rockwell, not 67. This is a softie really, which is still 3 higher than the Bailout, and higher than another one I'm going to show you in a minute. But this one is genuinely one of my most carried in this last year. It's a beautiful action. I mean, I know that because I'm a lefty, it's a little bit awkward to show the action as a drop shutty action, but honestly, if you just press that down, it falls. Luckily it falls on the back of my nail because it's very, very sharp. That's the real beauty of these Rocksteads, is that they are sharp and stay sharp. They need a bit of a stropping every now and again with the denim strop that they describe for you to build. I built one. I didn't want to muck about and do it wrong. This little one, because I carried it more before, perhaps before lockdown, it's going to need sharpened at some point because there's a couple of microchips in the blade. I wouldn't normally think about them too much. They would sharpen out in an ordinary sharpen, but it's difficult to sharpen these knives. Now, here's another one, which is a very bizarre knife to carry as an everyday carry, I think, because it's very, very big. If you lived in the country and worked on a farm, actually I think this would make a great knife to carry because it really is a solid chunk of a thing. Theoretically it's a flipper, but it does need a bit of wrist to make it work. This is the Medford MKT, Medford Knife and Tool on belay in D2 steel. So it's a tool steel. Again, it's a toughie. I don't know what the Rockwell is. I think it's probably 58 to 60 sort of level. They do come very, very sharp. For a blade that's whopping great, 4mm thick or whatever it is, it's got a really nice hollow grind that comes down pretty thin behind the edge, and they do come very sharp. I have a small problem with it, and it is I use the Workshop Precision Adjust sharpener, and this is just too big for the jaws. So I'm not quite sure what I'll do when I do have to sharpen it, but to date all I've ever had to do is just drop it, because they do come well ground, nice and sharp. It's just solid titanium handles. There's no weight relief in these, but honestly that's not what this knife is about. This is not a bailout or a bug out. This is a chonking great working knife, and it works very, very hard. Does a really good job, and I've carried that far more than I would ever otherwise have done. It's a great big stock pin in it as well. That it's not a. It looks as though when it's opening, it looks like that might have been supposed to be a thumb stud, but it's purely a stop pin. So when the knife is fully open, it sits inside that pocket. When it's fully closed, it sits inside that pocket. Solid as a rock. Not that I would want to use this as a pry bar, but it's probably stronger than most pry bars. It's really is a solid knife, and I've just taken the opportunity to carry it, not because it's needed or necessary or anything like that, but just because I can, and because I can, I do, and I enjoy it. So that should be 5. I'm going to show you 2 more, and only because there really isn't a justification for not showing you them. One, I've been carrying this a lot of late, but only because I've had it in for review, and it's here, and it's one of the best everyday carries. I think in a world where I was actually going out and carrying a knife, and I could carry a lock knife, this is one that I might actually carry every day, because compared to most of these, it's quite light, but it also looks good. The Bailout is a good working knife, but it's a bit drab looking. Equally, you could say the same of the Sebenza and possibly even the Rocksteads. This is a good looking knife. There's just no way of getting away from. Oops! It's also sharp, and you shouldn't catch it by the blade. But there we are. It's a really smart looking knife. You could happily get away with carrying that. But in this country, of course, you don't want to draw attention to yourself. You want something that goes under the radar. So you're not going to carry that, because people are going to say, "Oh, look at that." If you're going to carry a little knife that you want to and you want to get away with it, you'd be much better off with a little plain Jane Sebenza, or even a semi-plain Jane. It's got a nice pattern in the milling, Rockstead. That's 6, and you'd think that should be enough. Well, I'm carrying this little pouch at the moment, and in there I've been carrying my Heathen TK3. So it's definitely, certainly the last few weeks, this has definitely been my most carried knife. Again, it's a convex. I don't know if there's a coincidence here, but this is a convex grind, although this does, unlike the Rocksteads, this does have a bevel at a terminal bevel at the end. This is, incidentally, this is a Sanmai construction knife as well, so it's very Japanese in many ways, although it's marked Sweden all over it. They are made in Japan, and if it had no marks on it, you would know it was Japanese. There'd be absolutely no doubt about it. That's Sanmai construction. The S3G steel, super gold, hardcore in the centre, with the VG2, which obviously again is very Japanese, cladding on the outside, and a bit of desert ironwood. Beautiful, beautiful knife. That's obviously in my carry at the moment, so it's very difficult. There isn't really a way to say that there are 5 knives there. And I should also say, and this is purely because we're in lockdown, I could never carry this any other time, but I've been carrying it a lot of late, is my Heathen Imbler, which again is a laminated steel. This one is COS, which is a proprietary steel that they use. Again, it's obviously made in Japan, Sanmai construction, and it's covered in ooze, but I say that's because it's actually on my belt at the minute. I just pulled it out of its scabbard. This again is desert ironwood, which I'm Huge fan of desert ironwood. This is also a convex blade with a zero grind. So a clearly Japanese knife. There's no way of getting away from it, despite the fact it's marked Embla, Falkneven, laminated COS, Falkneven, the 3 crown trademark on the handles, just like the pocket knife. This is a great knife, absolutely brilliant slicer. This is hard again. The TK3, I forgot to mention, is hardened to 62 Rockwell. This is a mere 60, but it's still relatively hard for a sheath knife. You might normally expect maybe 58. This is up to 60, which gives it a pretty strong, pretty good long-lasting edge, and COS isn't as chippy as, say, VG10. They only take their VG10 to 58. This is goes up one level. The SG3, and you can get similar knives to this, not this particular one, in S3G. And they'll take them up to 62 Rockwell. I don't know how far you go with a sheath knife. You know, I mean, I wouldn't go battening wood with this thing. I'm sure I know it's capable of it. You know, it's a good thick 4mm knife, but it's just far too beautiful to start hitting it with a lump of wood. And when you know, you should really be using an axe. You should use the right tool for the right job, if at all possible. But in a survival situation, I'm sure one could bat on with that. But anyway, that also fits into my knives I most carry, for the simple reason that I can, but it wouldn't normally, and it certainly wouldn't fit into the normal field of this particular channel. Though, you know, mostly I have pocket knives. I do have other sheath knives. It's not, you know, it's not alone. That's this buck that I have. That's a very well used knife that I've had for a very long time. Rather like that. I think I prefer the Falkneven. Falkneven is a nicer knife, but this is not a bad knife. And considering I bought this maybe 20 years ago for, I think it was about 50 or 60 quid. I think they're over 100 now, but even at over 100, I think it's still a bit of a bargain for a good solid 4-inch bladed 4mm, yeah, 4-inch bladed, 4mm thick. Might actually be 3mm thick, I'm not entirely sure. Hunting knife, camp knife, whatever, bits of brass on it. It's looking a bit tarnished, but that's just showing its age. Compared to the Falkneven, I don't know. I'll do a video on the Falkneven, I think. Anyway, this has gone on far too long. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this stuff, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, please remember to subscribe and ring the bell if you want notifications. Thank you. Bye.